Good evening and welcome to our continued coverage of Decision 2022 on this day that is a significant one in regards to being the day after the announcement of the presidential election results and all that has come after that, which includes a division in the IEBC that is in regards to the commissioners, where we have 4 against 3. And especially 4 against the chairman specifically, who they have singled out, having claimed that he did not act in line with the expectations of the law, according to them. Then we've also seen the man who the chairman declared as number 2, that is Raila Amolo Odinga, who has then said that he and Azimio at large have rejected the results that Bwana Chebukati here announced. But Bwana Chebukati, that is Wafula Chebukati, the chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, says that he has done his duty. That was as he declared declared William Ruto the president-elect. And you can find all these stories and the videos as well on ntvkenya.co.ke. And there's a lot we can find on this platform on our website. So be sure to log in. Just go and get all the details you need. We have stories on President-elect William Ruto now receiving similar intelligence briefs as Uhuru Kenyatta, who, as per the announcement and the gazettement of his name as the president-elect, the duly elected president, is meant to be, is the man who is meant to succeed Uhuru Kenyatta. So that's definitely a lot to look into. So be sure to get on our website. And today has been a day where we have seen concerns on numbers and conversations around numbers coming after the 4 IEBC commissioners who have dissented from the chairman's position, having raised that as one of the concerns that they have which informed their decision to distance themselves from the results that were read by Wafula Chebukati. So there's a lot going on, a lot of legalese that needs to be understood and broken down in regards to the decision by these 4 commissioners, the allegations, as well as the concerns raised by Raila Odinga on behalf of the Azimio team, and just on his behalf as the presidential candidate, backed by his running mate Martha Karua. And so we shall, as we go along the different broadcasts and bulletins, we are going to be seeking to bring the clearer indications on what this means and what the interpretations of this are legally. But now I want to get into the conversation. We'll begin with a bit of the numbers conversation, and I'm joined on set at the moment by Tom Wolf. He's been my co-pilot on some of these broadcasts. Well done. It's good to have you back, Tom.
Nice to be here.
From TIFA.
I thought I was finished, but here we are.
It ain't done. So tell me, Tom, first of all, one of the biggest things that's been, happening today is in regards to the IEBC commissioners, when they, those who say that they are dissenting, then they do not support Wafula Chebukati's position. And one of the reasons they gave, the first reason on their list was that the percentages, when added, come to 100.01%. And they then said that 0.01% is equivalent to about 140,000 votes.
142,000.
Yeah, for 2,000 votes.
I think that's what they said.
Yes. Please, I'd like your comment on that as a man who deals with numbers.
I was never very good at mathematics, actually. But I have to admit, and thank you, I saw you in the afternoon talking with Sam Muthoka from Ipsos and a lady whose name I didn't catch.
Achieng.
And yes, that's right. And I believe you had a calculator, or you were calculating on your laptop. And you correct me if I'm wrong. It's nice to talk to the person who was doing it. You came up with a much reduced figure, I think of 1,400 votes. And I think you suggested that the commissioners in their statement, it seemed they had rounded off the numbers too early, and you were reading us figures with like 12 or 15 numbers to the right of the decimal point. So maybe you could, for the benefit of the viewers who weren't watching you then, maybe you would like to explain exactly what calculations you were doing. But whether you want to repeat that or not now, that's up to you. But I would just say, I would have thought that the 4 commissioners who stood behind that statement that the vice chair read out. Either one of them is at least as good at calculations as you, or before, at such a critical time for the country, would have taken advice from a statistician. So without impugning their numbers, and if you want to defend yours, go right ahead, but as just an observer, it seemed a bit surprising, but we'll see, especially if this case goes to court. And you remember when the former Prime Minister, Raila Odinga, made his statement, he made explicit reference to those 4 commissioners in their calculations. So I would think they would know how firm a numerical foundation they're standing on. But maybe you want to share with viewers what they might have missed in the afternoon. That's up to you.
All right, and we have it, I mean, on our socials, name it, and it's just basically showing that the figure they were putting together was going to 100.01% because of rounding off the decimal point to 2 decimal points. If you rounded off to I think I did about 11 decimal points. It comes to 99.9999997.
Not over 100%, as they had suggested.
But when you even round off to 3 decimal points, it comes to 100 flat. So it was a matter of rounding off. Then I've seen, there's been the conversation around, if you look at the online banter, around the 0.01% of the 14 million.
You excuse me for interrupting, but you reminded me. First thing when I woke up this morning and looked at my phone, I saw a text message from a journalist. Someone, he told me he's a journalist. I don't know him. And I can't remember what network. But he asked me if I would comment because he presented a figure of 100.1, not 100. So when I got to the office, I was actually the only one there today, nice and quiet. I missed the company. I did a version of the calculation that you did, and I got 99.9. So I texted him back, and I said, sama ni ndugu lakini hesabu zangu hazijazidi mia moja. Then I didn't hear a response from him again. So I think different people have been looking at their calculations, and that's fine.
And in such a divided situation where we have not just the mathematical conversation, because this now goes beyond the mathematical conversation from how it's playing out.
Sure.
It also moves to the political, because the
legal.
Yes, and the legal. And you could see, if you look at the discussion online, there's those who are pro the pronouncement that Chebukati made of declaring William Ruto the duly elected. Yes, are arguing that it's a rounding off error. Then we have those who are pro Raila Odinga arguing otherwise. So it's now becoming less of the science, and more of getting to the politics of it and name it. But
sorry, just before you move on.
Yes, carry on.
Don't
please.
lose the thought. Some of our viewers may have been fixed to their television, media, computer screens 22 years ago when we had that recount in Florida in the infamous or famous election of George W. Bush and Vice President Al Gore, which at the end came down to, I think, something like 327 votes in Florida. And I believe a local court had ordered another recount in some of these voting areas. The case went to the Supreme Court, and there was a 5-4 vote against Gore, against giving them more time in Florida to do it, which basically handed the election to George Bush. We all know, even without what happened in the last American election with the attempted overthrowing of the vote at the U.S. Capitol. But I think Kenyans should be proud that, as far as I know, of the 46,266 polling stations, I haven't heard from you people in the media of a single case where there was a dispute at that level. Now, somebody said the other day there were maybe a couple of places where party agents didn't, but just think what an incredible improvement that is over the last 3 elections. Here we have a dispute at what happened at the very end. And I'm sure that will be resolved one way or another. But even leaving aside the fact that I'm not aware of any serious violence in voting queues, blocking people from trying to come to vote, as we saw, going back to the 92 and 97 elections. So Kenya has come really a long, long way. And maybe the next time we have an election in the US, Kenya better send observers to watch to get it right in my country.
It will be...
Whatever might be the outcome
Yes.
of any petition filed. I don't want to prejudge any complaints that any disappointed, whether at the presidential level or any other levels of the 5 other positions. And I haven't heard announcements by any of the other disappointed candidates that they're preparing petitions. But we'll see what happens.
Because in regards to the candidates, William Ruto is at peace with Chebukati's decision, and he actually called him a hero.
I heard that.
On the other hand, Raila Odinga has called the 4 commissioners heroes for denouncing the position that Chebukati took. Then we have Maure Wahiga, who has endorsed William Ruto, and he even has held a press briefing.
I saw that just before I left the house. Lodging some complaints against the behavior of some Azimio agents in Bomas.
Exactly. So we already know which side he's on. George Ojakoya said that he's not going to accept results which are not, have not been approved by everyone in that sort of ecosystem, the agents, etc. So it appears to be inclining towards Azimio's position, Do you feel it will have any impact if, say, Wajakoya decides to back this, or is it now we're out of the numbers game anyway? It's really more of a legal thing now.
A process issue. I don't know how much more authority or clout or energy
or sway
it would give to a petition, or whether he would file his own. I'm not an election legal expert by any means. We know the Kenyan Constitution is still pretty young, 12 years. Bado ni kijana, if I can talk about a katiba being a kijana. And there are so many issues which, as we go forward, require legal or constitutional clarification. And even one judgment by a particular court, even the Supreme Court, can surprise us following. I remember after the 2013 judgment, and there was a forum with some of Kenya's most renowned constitutional lawyers before the 2017 election, a couple months before, and they were unanimous in saying that decision on the 2013 case was so restrictive, constrictive, it would be nearly impossible for any court to overturn any presidential election. Milele na milele, amen. And yet what happened just a few months later? The Supreme Court, okay, some of the personnel had changed, and on that petition, as you know very well, the issue that was brought to the court was not based on the numbers, but based on process, and it was nullified on that basis. So if one benefit for everyone, for the country as a whole, from any petition being filed now, will clarify what is the actual required relationship between the chair and the other 6 commissioners, or in this case 4, in terms of kupiga muhuri on those final results. Because, as I say, I don't know. I know that the chairman is the sole returning officer for that election.
Yes.
And has the sole authority to announce, to declare. But just before the declaration, these 4 commissioners were saying that their objections were not taken on board or taken into consideration. I have no idea. There are probably some of your legal analysts who come on air sometimes.
Yeah.
I wish we had 1 or 2 of them here.
Yeah, we've been trying to get them, but carry on.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of respect for them. And they, as you know, they don't just appear on NTV, they circulate, which shows how much credibility they have. Again, I don't want to name names, but I can think of at least 5, 6, 7 that you people in the media rely on for very sober and unbiased analysis of these issues. So maybe even now, without the Supreme Court having to rule, any one or all of them would say it's very clear that these 4 commissioners should have been given more of a hearing. There should have been maybe a longer delay before the chairman announced or whatever. But if that's an issue which needs some clarification in law by the highest court of the land, so be it. I mean, let's have that done.
Okay. Okay, and we'll get back into the conversation and to just touch on a few other areas as we carry along. But for now, we take a short break on Decision 2022. We'll be back after this. Stay with us.
Dust off your Subaru and upgrade your Lexus, because Coop Bank is now offering 100% financing on used cars. With Coop Bank pre-owned car financing, anyone with an income can walk into a second-hand dealership, select the car that best suits them, and get financing from Cooperative Bank. To find out more, walk into a Cooperative Bank near you for details. Terms and conditions apply.
Kenya Revenue Authority would like to remind all VAT-registered taxpayers to upgrade their ETR in order to enjoy the following. 1. Faster processing of VAT refunds. 2. Simplified VAT return filing. 3. A fair business environment. 4. Ability to verify the validity of the invoice. And 5. Automated activation of the ETR. What's more, the upgraded ETRs are available in 4 categories suitable for all businesses. Visit www.kra.go.ke for the approved list of ETR suppliers. Kenya Revenue Authority. Tulipe ushuru, tujitegemee.
Magic.
This is NTV.
Welcome back, and I'm still having a conversation with Tom Wolf. Tom, let's look at the polls that had been released before the elections. And, you know, legally there was only a certain time up to which, you know, pollsters
can't be released within 5 days.
Exactly. There is a difference between, like, in terms of the presidential results from what you guys had released.
True.
Vis-a-vis what Chebukati has released. Why?
Well, we will take time, because it is an important issue, to find an answer, or find some answers. I remember just after the last set of survey results were released, very close, I think TIFA was the last. We released on the 6 days before the election. And 2 other firms released 1 or 2 days before that. And there was a political analyst, quite highly regarded, I won't mention his name, who was on another network at one of the morning shows. And he made the assertion that whatever the polls were showing, the results were going to be very different. And his argument was, especially on Mount Kenya. I can't remember his exact words, so I don't want to quote him, but he said, for the first time, the people of Mount Kenya do not have a presidential candidate in a multi-party election, even if both of the running mates were from the mountain, one from Nyeri and one from Kirinyaga. And he said, perhaps for obvious reasons, again, I'm not quoting him word for word, the people of the mountain will want to be as close to the next government as possible. And he said, therefore, in the remaining 5 days, you will see a very big wave sweeping over the mountain in the direction of Azimio. So what he meant was, you won't see it in another survey because another one can't be done. You'll see it when the electoral and independent electorate and boundaries committee announce the results. Well, we didn't see that, did we? In fact, if you look at our results, and I think of those other firms, in the Mount Kenya region, the Azimio candidate got slightly less than what we were getting in our final polls. So what can we conclude from that? One thing we can conclude is that, at least with regard to the mountain, and it seems to be the same everywhere, or at least many other places, there was no what we call bandwagon effect. Now we would need to do, and we will do, in our first survey moving forward, we want to ask people, did you see any polls before the election? In one or the other that you saw, which presidential candidate was leading? And then, whom did you actually vote for? And if people are honest, and that might be a big if, it will be very clear that there was no bandwagon effect, in that the numbers that Raila Odinga and Martha Karua got were higher than what we showed in our last poll. In fact, even if there are some minor flaws in the official results, and as I said, I haven't heard any accusations about that, they got less on the mountain and in a number of other areas. Otherwise, Raila would have been declared the winner. So this suspicion or belief that polls can influence voting seems not to be the case. Seems not to be the case. Because as you were suggesting, most of the firms who released numbers before the election were showing Raila leading.
Yes.
And he didn't win according to IEBC. Now, it may be by the time we come through a petition, those numbers will be thrown out. We have to see, first of all, the substance of the petition. Is it based on numbers, faulty calculations, or will it be, as 2017, aimed mainly at process, whether the right procedures were followed? But just to end up, when you say, or you ask, how would we interrogate, assuming our numbers were incorrect, what would be the explanations? And I'm thinking we need to look at 4 things. First, sampling. Insofar as we use the distribution of registered voters according to IEBC, was our sample basically accurate? And then closely related to that is voter turnout. In the parts of the country where the president-elect had more support, did more people go out and vote than those parts of the country, or at least enough of them, where the former prime minister had more support? And that's pretty easy to calculate. I've started doing it today with an Excel spreadsheet and downloading figures from the IEBC portal. But we want to get at least 40 or 50 constituencies, or maybe at least 15 or 20 counties before we make that comparison. Third, as you were referring to, in the remaining week from when we did our final data collection to when people went to cast ballots, might there have been a change? Either from undecided to a certain candidate, or from one candidate to another. So when we do our next survey after the election, we want to ask people, did you change your voting intentions within the last month? And if people say yes, to ask from what to what. Now, they didn't change from a candidate to being undecided. first we have to ask them, did you actually vote in the election? You told us that you were a registered voter, and you said you were going to be voting. So did you actually go and vote? That's very important. But that also relates to turnout. But it's one thing to get turnout from the IBC, it's another thing to get it actually from respondents in a survey. And hopefully most of them would be honest and say they didn't vote if they did not. So we'd want to see a change. And then finally, something that I've mentioned and some things I've written, and I think I said it on air with NTV last week, there is the potential when we do a survey that people lie.
Yeah.
Now, we saw that especially in the Brexit vote in the UK in 2016. We saw it in the 2016 election, where many people who voted for Trump, when they were interviewed by pollsters before the election, they said they hadn't decided or they were voting for Hillary Clinton. And they voted for Trump. Now, why did they lie? Somehow they were embarrassed, and also with the UK with the Brexit vote. They felt, even if the interview was confidential, no one would ever know their name. They didn't want to reveal or confess that they were voting for either for the UK to leave the European Union or that they were voting for Donald Trump. Now, people have studied, they've done research to find out why people would have been embarrassed. But when we come to Kenya, is there any reason that you, Bwana can think of why somebody who is planning on voting for then Deputy President William Ruto would not have been honest in saying that to a pollster like Tifa? Maybe we can just let that.
You know, I'm wondering, it sounds like, not sounds, it just appears to be the reality that as you do your polls, you have a lot of reliance on trust that the respondents are being honest.
No, sorry, if I can interrupt.
No problem, yeah.
It's not reliance, but it behooves us, and yani inatupasa, to say when we get those results, to answer the questions, or at least pose the questions you asked. Are some undecided people really decided and they're not telling us? Are some people going to change in the remaining 5 days? Might some people be dishonest? And I said in our releases, we can't be 100% sure that these people who've told us who they're going to vote for, A, will really vote, or B, that they might not vote otherwise. We couldn't be 100% sure. So I would say yes, when we release numbers and say these are the figures we got, we are absolutely sure this is what we were told. But hey, you could be told, hey, tomorrow the sun is going to rise in the west. Well, meambiwa, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Yeah, so is your research then, to some extent, almost fingers crossed that someone is being honest? Because if you come and ask me, if I'm one of the respondents, and you ask me, are you going to vote? You're presuming that I'll be honest. Does that potentially take away the credibility of the research?
I wouldn't say it takes the credibility as long as we release the results with the kind of caveat that I mentioned, that we can't be sure about turnout, we can't be sure that some respondents are reluctant. Now, we know from all kinds of other research, especially relating to criminal activity, like asking people, have you ever stole food from a store? We know a certain percentage will not confess, even in a survey. Even with regard to being a registered voter, which you might think would be a straightforward thing. In both of our last surveys, we got more than 90% of our respondents, people 18 and over, saying they were registered. And we know from IEBC, with 22.1 million registered voters, and we know from the census updates with about 30 million adult Kenyans, that there's only around 85 or 86% of Kenyans who are registered. So 5 or 6 or 7% of our respondents were not telling the truth. And we said that very clearly. If you forgot, I will send you tomorrow that release, where not only did we give the figure of 90 or 3 or 94% saying they're registered, but even in the text that went along with the slide, we said this is an overstatement. Some of our respondents are not being... Now, if we know that some of our respondents, or some of those percentages are inflated, does that mean we should stop doing surveys? I don't think so. I mean, we even learn more about the political culture of the country if we know on certain questions, people are not all of them are telling the truth. But we learn, just like in the US, we learn from what you might call errors, or at least mismatches between survey results and the actual election results, that there are issues that need to be treated with more caution. And that's why, unlike some of the accusations about previous elections in Kenya, up to now, I am reassured, and I think you and other Kenyans should be too, that we haven't yet, anyway, seen accusations of massive ballot stuffing and the other, corroborating of the results that we heard accusations about in the past, which I think it's very, very good for the country, even if it provides some special challenges for us who are doing surveys.
Okay, and I'm looking at one of the final releases you did, which touched on Kajiado County, for instance.
Yes.
Where we had...
What was the date? Do you have the date of that release?
The date of this is 2nd August.
2nd August.
2nd August.
And can you give me, how many said they were undecided or wouldn't answer the question? No response?
Let me see. First of all, when it comes to the president, you have the governor candidates.
Yeah, that's for that race. How many were undecided?
13%.
13% undecided?
13% were undecided.
And were there any NRs, people who didn't answer the question? No response?
No.
No.
There were none here, not at least in this initial page.
So how far or how close were our survey results to the IEBC?
So when I look at...
Because I've forgotten the numbers.
It's okay, no problem. Lenku had, according to...
I thought it was high 40s we gave him.
Lenku 36.
36.
36, okay.
And he ended up getting how much, do you know?
I have the figure, let me just...
Because you remove those 13% and allocate them, or you want to go back to the TIFA. Who came second in TIFA?
Second was...
Mitito?
Yeah, Kato. So in terms of the order, it began, the TIFA research talked about Lenku, then Katole Metito, then Nkidianye, then we have...
The former governor, yeah?
Yes.
What was Kato's numbers? What were they?
His numbers in the TIFA?
Yeah, TIFA.
25.
And then the former governor?
Nkidianye 25 as well.
25.
Yeah.
And now I'm just guessing. If our numbers, if that survey was absolutely correct, and we just remove the undecideds, let's assume they wouldn't vote.
Yes, yes.
Then that means those other three figures have to go up to make 100%. So if, for example, the current governor, Olilenko, jumps up to 43, and the other two are tied, that means that they would be, let's see, around 28% each, because that would be 16, 5, 95, maybe 29% each.
And I look at...
Against 43%, something like that. Anyway, tell me what the official results were.
So the official results show that Lenku has 38.27%.
38.27. Okay, let's round it off to 38.
Yes, 38, and TIFA had given him 36. Huh?
Yes.
Kato Olemetito, TIFA gave him 25. He actually got 36.
36. So most of the undecideds went to him.
Then we have Nkidianye, TIFA gave him 25. And he got 24.5.
So he was basically within the margin of error.
Yes.
So as you said, the order was the same, but the main change was the jump in the...
And Cargo, who was the fourth guy, TIFA gave him 1%, and he actually got 0.87%, which is...
So round off
to 1%.
So that was the same.
You need to be careful with the rounding off. It's seeming to be a problem.
Well, I would say that if... It seems to me, as I remember, Kato was the UDA candidate.
Yes.
So he obviously benefited from a kind of moderate UDA wave there, but not enough to surpass the incumbent governor. Most people, in just looking at who is leading in the TIFA survey and who won, they would say, oh, TIFA got that one right. Even if, as you've pointed out with the numbers, the increase in Kato's percentage from 25 to 36, that's an 11% jump. That is much bigger difference, 11%, than our figure for the Odinga-Ruto disparity nationally. But people will say we got it wrong because the other person is in the lead. So what does it mean in the dictionary of poll results to say right and wrong? Is it a question of who wins, or is it how big the margin is? I'll let you answer that.
So when I look at the presidential poll for Kajiado County,
which was a part of that same survey.
yes, same survey,
Yes.
it gives Raila Odinga 47% in Kajiado County. Then Tifa gives William Ruto 39%, George Wajakoya 2%,
Yeah.
Mwaure Waihiga 0%. Then we have undecided at 12%.
12%.
Now, when it comes to the IBC, William Ruto gets 50%. So that's 11% more than what
The
he
same
polled in
percentage
Tifa.
jump as we saw with the gubernatorial candidate.
Yes, and Raila Odinga gets 49%.
So most of those undecideds, 85, 90% of them went to
But
William
we see
Ruto.
Wajakoya moves from, he has 0.29%.
He dropped.
Yet Tifa had given him 3%, so it's lower. 2%, I should say, sorry.
That happened nationally, not just in Kajiado. And by the way, when we released our last survey, that was about 4 days after the previous one, which was a household survey. This was a mobile phone survey. No, sorry, it was from the end of June. Wajakoya had dropped from 4 to 2%. Between the end of June and end of July, he lost half of his numbers
Did you manage to kind of identify what could be the factors behind that?
Not scientifically, but what I said was, or what we said in the release, in the text, was it seemed the initial excitement or drama around Professor Wajakoya was subsiding, and I even wrote in the final survey, it would not surprise me if it drops half again from 2 to 1, that, and without any offense to Mr. Wajakoya or Professor, we suggested that maybe some respondents were saying they were going to vote to him just for fun.
The FUD.
Just to have a good time, because he's an exciting, colorful character. But when they actually went into a polling station, especially having seen the survey results, knowing that he had no chance of winning, they would make a choice between two more realistic competitors. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if his numbers dropped even further, from the 4 to the 2, even
below
lower.
1.
And that's exactly what happened.
Okay.
So but in that case, I wouldn't say people were lying when they told the pollsters, and the other survey firms were also getting around 2% for him. And yet the final results, as you say, not even 0.5%, I think it's 0.44.
Yeah.
That some people were playing games with us, playing games with themselves, just having fun with their own minds, but not really seriously intending to vote for him, because he certainly has not made any accusations that any of his votes were stolen.
Okay.
So
I want to put the numbers on the touch screen just so that we can see, for the benefit of the viewers, so we can see how the numbers look like. Just,
let me get out of the way here.
No problem. We are okay. So I guess we could even just move the seat, and all if that's okay, then we can pick it from here. I want to look at the governor seat, so that we just to look at how the polls went vis-a-vis how the TIFA research, what you had initially given, so we can just compare much easier. And when I look at TIFA had given
For Nairobi now?
yes, for Nairobi,
Yeah.
for Nairobi, okay. The TIFA research had given Johnson Sakaja 53%.
Wow, that's exactly correct.
And gave Polycarp Igathe 36%.
He went up a
But
bit.
you can see in the IBC tally, he gets 43.
And how many undecideds had we?
We had 10% undecided.
Okay, so that's obviously those. There's
10
no undecided on the ballot, as Sam Muthoka said.
Yes,
earlier.
yes. The
Right.
ballot does not show the
undecided.
undecided. And so we see that then we had others. The others, came to 1% on the TIFA survey, but we can see here the others go to collectively are more than 1%.
But come on, Bueno, that's within the survey's margin of error.
Just pointing out.
That's okay. That's okay.
So,
but remember, in IEBC results, there's no margin of error. Or
yes.
there might be a little error, but people can argue about that in court. But with the survey, every survey has a margin of error.
Yes.
But I would say we got Nairobi
pretty correct, because it is 53%.
Yes.
So we see that from the 36% you give to Uganda, that's why we have the difference of about 7%. 7%. Now I want to look at the presidential race. So we have Nairobi. That's Nairobi, yes. Let's look at how the presidential figures look for Nairobi.
58 to 41, yes.
Let me just, here we go. Now, the Nairobi results, Tifa gave Raila Odinga 52%. Raila actually got 58.23%. On the Tifa poll, William Ruto was at 34%. Now we see him at 41%. Wajakoya 5%. Wajakoya here 0.42%. David Wahiga, More Wahiga had 0.32%, but had been given 1%, and now there was 8% undecided. Okay.
So that explains how both Raila and Odinga and William Ruto went up about 6% each.
Yes, because Raila from 52 to 58%, William Ruto 34, 41.
Up 7, yeah.
Yeah, so the sense here is that you're very confident with your numbers because the argument has been, so what could have changed as significant as you're seeing? Is it that the undecided, does the data even capture those who opted not to vote? You know, there are those who may have given a response saying that I'm going to vote for candidate A.
That's right.
Then I eventually just don't go to the polling station.
That's why it's so important to do a constituency by constituency, or at least county by county, turnout analysis to see which of the two presidential candidates benefited most by getting their voters out on the 9th of August. And that's, as I said, will take us about a week to make those calculations. Then I'd be very happy to come back in.
Oh, sure.
And then to try and defend.
So that's going to give us insight as to, so are you going to the same people?
Oh, no, I'm saying we'll just look at the IEBC numbers.
Yes.
Look at turnout and see how that would affect the numbers that we had. So, for example, we made an assumption that, for example, in Nairobi, that because we had no otherwise, that all those 52% who said they were going to vote for the former prime minister did so. Because if they weren't registered voters, we didn't interview them. And then
so when you're interviewing, were you asking for proof of?
No, we didn't ask for proof.
Okay.
Thought that was a little too invasive.
Okay.
And especially you can't do that in a mobile phone survey.
Okay.
Although our second to last survey was household. We did ask people to name their polling station. But we didn't throw people out who couldn't name. But as I said earlier, we know more people than possibly could be claimed to be registered voters because we got 93 or 94%. But even leaving that aside, we will be able to look out the turnout figures and see who benefited most from getting their people out. I was looking briefly in the home areas of the president-elect and the former prime minister. Turnout figures were very high, around 90%. They're about equal.
Okay.
But we want to look at some of these other areas, and then we'll give you the, as I say, we'll put out a document when it's ready.
Okay.
Showing, because we also need to know, as the pollsters in the US have had to go back to the drawing board, as it were, about the last couple of elections, and in the UK on Brexit, and find out what would help to explain why they weren't as accurate as they could be. But it's interesting in a county like this, as you said, and more or less in Kajiado as well, once you take out the undecideds, there's not much mystery, except for what you mentioned about the divergence between the numbers for Wajakoya and Maure. And I would think, but this is just a guess,
yes,
that the reason that the numbers they got in using the Nairobi example, are so much lower than ours is because, and we could see this in our data, that especially Wajakoya, he had much more support among the youth. I mean young voters, 18 to 24. 3 times as many in that age group said they were voting for him than older voters.
Okay.
And I would suspect, although I can't prove it at the moment, that those were among the people who had lied about being registered, these young people, or they were enjoying doing other things on the 9th of August and didn't turn out to vote for him. Or were among some who went into the polling station and said, let me vote for one of the real contenders. But I would suspect that they were among those who were not really registered and had not been honest with us. Because it was clear he was getting more support among younger would-be voters, whether they actually voted or not.
All right, thank you, and we're looking forward to the poll that you're saying you're going to do, which is going to be, the post results.
You'll have to pay for that one.
No problem.